The Sikha begins with a well-known concept. This is Parshas Chukas. So the Rebbe starts with Torah is divided into three categories. The mitzvahs are divided into three categories: Edus, Chukim, and Mishpatim. Mishpatim are those mitzvahs which are logical, make sense. Don't kill, don't steal. Most societies have laws which are similar to that. Now, some will allow you to kill this, but among themselves, definitely, don't kill, don't steal, don't rape. These are like natural things which we understand that if you want to live together with people, you've got to have something like that. Those are called mishpatim. Those type of laws. Human understanding, human intellect would say, of course. Then you have edus, testimonials. Shabbos commemorates the creation of the world. Pesach commemorates the exodus from Egypt. We wouldn't have thought of how to keep Shabbos by ourselves. It's, you can't do this, you can't do that, you should do this. We wouldn't necessarily have made the commemoration of creation in this manner. But once Hashem commands it, we say, yeah, I can understand. There's a certain reason and a rationale that makes sense to me. Same thing, matzah. Would I want to eat? No. I don't know anybody who likes matzah, really. Well, whatever. But it gets Sparty matzahs, the soft stuff. Then maybe. But the Ashkenazic burnt stuff, forget it. But once I say, this is the bread of affliction, this is what your ancestors ate in Egypt. They ate it also getting out of Egypt. Commemorates the miracle. Gotcha. I understand eating matzah. The same thing with all the other edos, the other mitzvahs which are testimonials. They teach us something which we wouldn't have thought ourselves to do. But once we're commanded, yeah, it makes sense. Or at least I can understand it. Then you have chukim. Why can't I put wool and linen together? Wool is a nice fabric. Linen is a nice fabric. Why can't they go together? And wool and silk can go together. And linen and silk can go together. So why can't wool and linen go together? And a bunch of other, kashrus. You can't eat milk and meat. Why not? Milk is kosher. Meat is kosher. If you mix them together, cheeseburgers are supposed to taste good. So why? We don't have a reason. How much more so the Torah Duma, the Red Heifer, which we speak about in this week's Parsha. Okay, nobody finds a good reason for that one. So that's what the Rebbe says here, that chukim are mitzvahs which, like the Red Heifer, have no intellectual rationale, neither they contradict reason, must be observed solely with kabbalah soul, with acceptance of God. In other words, what happened? All the mitzvahs are basically Ratzon Elyon, God's will. Why do we do this mitzvah? Because Hashem commanded it. Does it make sense to us? Maybe yes, maybe no. But it doesn't matter whether it makes sense. I mean, like we said, there's a reason to put on tefillin, that it teaches you to subject your mind and your heart. It's a reason to keep Shabbos. It reminds you of creation. All sorts of good reasons for certain mitzvahs. But you don't do them because of the reasons. You do them because this is what Hashem commanded. And the same thing with don't kill and don't steal. Yes, I don't kill and don't steal because I want a stable society. But behind the real motivation not to kill and not to steal is Hashem commanded. Otherwise, there'll come a situation where, don't steal, but here and there to shave off a little bit here, to shave a little bit there. No, that's okay. And, this is a divine command. So in all cases. So all the mitzvahs are just God's will, fundamentally. However, in the mitzvahs, which are Eidos and Mishpatim, God's will also was compressed, came down, whichever word you want to, what we say here, contracted and clothed it in logical thought. God made his will something that we can understand and relate to, even though his will and its pure form transcends our understanding, because it's his, and just like he transcends our understanding, his will does. When it comes to Eidos and Mishpatim, he contracted his will and made it understandable to us. Chukim, that's just his will. Even though those mitzvahs are meant to be observed in this world, Chukim are mitzvahs which are in the physical world that we live in, so you'd think they would have some sort of logical rationale. Still, they remain expression of will that transcends understanding. Even as they exist in our world and material world, they reflect the essence of God's will, Etzem Ratzon, which is directly connected to his essence. What is the idea he's saying here? When I want something, I've given this example a couple of times before. I want to learn the whole Talmud. I wish I wanted to learn the whole Talmud, quite honestly. But in principle, I want to learn the whole Talmud. If I learn half the Talmud, am I going to be happy? From the point of view of knowledge, I should be happy. Okay, I haven't learned the whole thing, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If I learned the whole thing, I would have a greater understanding of the half that I did understand. I did learn. But meantime, if you're just looking from the point of view of knowledge, you got half, you got something. Say thank you for what you got. From the point of view of will, I want this. If you have half, means nothing. If you have 99, it means nothing. If you don't accomplish your will in its entirety, from the point of view, I want this, it's nothing. That's what he says. Will is connected to God's essence. His I, who he is, what he wants, are connected one with the other. Because the Hebrew, the word rotzon, is the same letters as the word sinur, which means pipe. Rotzon is sinur hanefesh, the pipeline, the conduit which flows through the soul. The soul is expressed in will. When it comes to intellect is something outside the soul. Yes, the way one person understands is different than another person understands, but intellect has its own definition. Will, what is will? The outpouring of the soul, what the soul wants. So because the chukim are directly connected to God's essence, they can't be understood. Because God can't be understood. So something which is directly connected to who he is going to transcend understanding. For this reason, the observance of chukim involves commitments stemming from the essence of the will of the person to fulfill them, reflecting Kabbalah soul and built to self-nullification, both of which are rooted in the essence of his soul that transcends his conscious powers. What did he just say here? It's a deep point. We want to relate to the chukim which are God's will coming in an expression as it is. So if I try to relate to that with my mind, A, I'm not going to understand it, and B, I'm not trying to take a whole big flow of a pipeline, and put it into this little cup. This little cup can't get it. Well, our little minds, cup in Yiddish is the head. Our little minds, our little cup, can't take that overflowing from God's essence, which is totally transcends the world. So if we come to Kabbalah, we come to these chukim with a mind, it's not going to work. How are we going to relate to chukim? Not through sense of Mesiras Nefesh, giving ourselves over, bitul, all these words which express not me, but self-transcendence. Which that leads the Rebbe to another point. The Alter Rebbe connects chukim with the Lashon Chakikah. Chakikah means to engrave. We mentioned several times. There's a difference between engraved letters and written letters. What's the difference? When I write letters on paper, I can wash them off. What does it mean I can wash them off? That the letters are not the paper. They're something else. In other words, they have an identity aside from the substance on which they're written. When a person learns something, he's added something to who he is, which is good, nice, you add it, but it's not you. Chukim are not learned because they're nothing special, they're nothing extra. They're an expression of God's will, which is really, in essence, our will. Who we are, what a Jew really is, an actual part of God from above. And so who is a Jew? Expression of Hashem as he is, and therefore he's going to, what's going to be his complete expression? Chukim. That expression of godliness which is unlimited. Because that tunes into him. So this is the advantage of Edus Mishpatim. Edus Mishpatim, the testimonials, the judgments, those mitzvahs which we can understand, both from respect of God's will, not of the person fulfilling the mitzvahs, not represent the expression of will in its pure, unadulterated form. In such instances, both God's and the person's will are intermingled with reason and logic. That intellectual dimension of the physical substance of letters written on paper reflects in addition to the will of God and the person fulfilling the mitzvah. As we said, I understand it. That means what I understand and who I am are two separate things. And it's two separate. It's even two separate things from God's point of view, as it were. Yes, all the mitzvahs are one with Him. But
is there a deeper appreciation for a chayk done because it's something that you don't understand? It's like love that you're doing it for the other person just because they asked and not because it means anything to you.
The Misnagdim say like this: Halavai, I should keep the chukim like mishpatim. But Hashem, let me keep the chukim which I don't understand like the mishpatim should do. So mishpatim I fulfill with a full heart. Chukim I don't really want to fulfill them, but I do them anyway because I have to. But I want to do. Please let me do it with a full heart like the mishpatim. And Hasidim say, Halavai, so I should fulfill the mishpatim like the chukim. The chukim, that's like you said. I'm just doing it for you. I got nothing out of this. This gives me, on the contrary, I don't know. It doesn't give me anything. But it's for you. Mishpatim, that's for me. Edus, that's for me. Halavai, I should keep the mishpatim and the edus with the same commitment I do with the chukim. I should do them also for you, for him. It's a good chap. So, Eidus Mishpatim, but from the perspective of God's will and that of the person, does not represent the expression of will as pure or undoubted form. In such instances, both God's will and the person's will are intimately reason logic. That intellectual dimension, like the physical substance, letters, and paper, reflects addition to the will of God and the person from the mitzvah. Who can respond, in contrast, reflect the unmodified expressions of man's and God's essential will, connecting the expression of the man's soul, the essence of God, without the involvement of an intellect, reason, or any other external factors. So he's really said the fundamental point here. He said a lot. Now he takes it one step further. The archetype, the prime example of a chok is the mitzvah of the Red Heifer. We see that Shlomo was the wisest of all men. He had grasped the most sublime ideas. The Medrash quotes him like this. He says, I was able to comprehend all the other difficult passages of the Torah. Regarding the passage of the Red Heifer, I researched, I asked, and I sought. I said, I'll become wise. But I realized that it eluded me. He tried. I want to understand this. And he couldn't do it. The rationale for this mitzvah was revealed only to Moshe, our teacher. As the Medrash states, the Holy and Blessed Be told Moshe, to you alone will I reveal the rationale for the Red Heifer. Now he goes to an interesting thing. It says about the Red Heifer, it doesn't say, Zos chukas apara, or Zos chukas atara. It doesn't say, this is the statue of the Red Heifer, or this is the statue of purity. What does it say? Zos chukas haTorah. This is the statue of the Torah. Why? When it speaks about Pesach, it says, Zos chukas haPesach. This is the statue of Pesach. Why here do you say this is the statue of the Torah? Because this is the whole Torah. This commitment to Hashem, surpassing reason, surpassing logic, not bound by any other force whatsoever, that's the whole Torah. The fundamental dimension of all the mitzvahs, even the Mishpat and Eidus, is God's sublime will, which transcends understanding entirely. By contrast, concerning other mitzvahs, God's will is enclosed in reason and logic. Nevertheless, the essence of even those mitzvahs remains God's will. Since God's will did not become enclosed in the garments of reason in the mitzvah of the Red Heifer, it is overtly revealed in that mitzvah. Therefore, this mitzvah represents the Torah in its totality. When anyone understand what the Torah is all about, chukim, and that which chok, one that you can't understand at all, the Red Heifer. Now, the two paradoxical and intellectually astonishing dimensions regarding the offer of the Red Heifer, aspects of contrary to logic. Red Heifer is, it says, Mataris atmeim, matamis atahorim. All those, you want to make somebody who is in contact, that came in contact with a corpse, he became impure because of contact with the corpse. How does he gain purity? Through the ashes of the Red Heifer. But there's the second point here. The person who sprinkles the ashes on him, the person who burns the Red Heifer, everybody else involved, what happens to them? They become impure. In other words, the Red Heifer is used to purify people who became impure. But everybody who helps bring it becomes impure. It purifies the impure, makes impure the pure. Why? What's the factor here? What's involved? Another aspect. All the other sacrifices were offered in the base of Mikdash, in the sanctuary itself, in the courtyard, in the actual building, depending on which sacrifice we're talking about. Red heifer, outside on a mound of islands, which is across the whole valley from the base of Mikdash. What happened? Why? So if we think about these 2 points, this reveals the dimension associated with the essence of the soul. The aspect of the soul which is engraved in the core of the Jewish being. As we said before, the core of a Jew's being is his godly soul, which transcends logic. So that's why we have these 2 baffling dimensions of the red heifer, because we're talking about the soul itself, which is baffling. The soul doesn't make sense. So what relates to the soul that doesn't make sense? Mitzvah like the red heifer. And then it embodies the soul, Torah in its totality. And then also it says this mitzvah comes through the power of Moshe Rebbe, of Moshe. He's going to explain all these 3 points as we go on. But let's say what this says here. The Jews who are from Moshe, the strength of the divine servant stems to the essence soul. The rationale for the red heifer was revealed only to him. His Moshe who inspires and empowers all the Jews to carry out this type of divine service. Most of us find it hard to tap the core of our beings. And they say that no exits in foxholes. When a Jew is in a really tight situation, he's going to call out to Hashem from the core of his heart. Seder, of course. Well, what about when you're not in the foxhole? When you're in everyday life, going from day to day without thinking, then we don't really tune into the essence of our souls, because we don't need to. When you're under pressure, then you feel, I got to tune into the essence. You're not under pressure? I'll just do fine as is. I don't need the essence. So, Dapka, the essence of the soul. So who's going to bring out that essence of the soul? Somebody for whom he's always in contact with it. That's a Moshe Rebbe, that's a Moses. Or Chassidim would say that's a Rebbe. And you see a person who's by nature tuned in to his core. It inspires you to do exactly the same thing, tune into your core. I've told this story a couple times here. Your brother-in-law, your uncle, Ichim Shlabin, has a tefillin and mezuzah store around the corner from 770. When we're sitting in a little private for begging in the corner of 770 one night, he says, "Eli, I miss Sundays." What Sundays? Sundays was dollars. Sundays, anybody who wanted to had a chance to go up to the Rebbe and get $1 from him. It wasn't just getting $1. It was going to come to the Rebbe. So he just said, "I miss Sundays." So, we all miss Sundays. He says, "No, you don't understand. I miss Sundays because it's my best day of business. Every Sunday, I would sell hundreds of tefillin and mezuzahs." Now, a couple of people, the Rebbe would say, "Check your mezuzahs." probably 10, 15 people each week the Rebbe would say chapter 12 and mezuzahs. Those weren't his sales. His sales were those Jews who didn't have mezuzahs, who never had checked the mezuzahs in their lives, and they saw the Rebbe. I need a mezuzah. I just saw the Rebbe. I need a mezuzah. If godliness is I saw godliness alive by somebody else, and now it's enough alive by me that I need a mezuzah. That's what happened by Yisrael. So that's what's the Moshe Rabbeinu, this service of the Red Heifer. Who brings out this above knowledge service for every Jew? Moshe. To underscore this dynamic, God commanded Moshe, speak to the children of Israel that they bring to you Red Heifer. Who offered the Red Heifer? The Red Heifer? Elazar Cohen. The Red Heifer was brought to Moshe because he was the one who generated the spiritual power for the divine service associated with suffering at that time and for all time. For this reason, the sacrifice is always referred to as Red Heifer offered by Moshe. Moreover, the ashes of the Red Heifer offered by Moshe in the desert were used to purify all the Kohanim. In offering each of the other Red Heifers offered to the Arab second base of Mikdash, and will also be used even for the 10th and final one to be offered by Mashiach. Say a very deep thing there. There were 9, and there will be 10 Red Heifers offered throughout history. That's why every time there were 9. Is one. They used the ashes of the Red Heifer that Moshe brought from the time of the dedication of the sanctuary in the desert until after the destruction of the first base of Mikdash, after the destruction of the first temple. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of. It was huge. It was a huge effort. I don't know exactly how it worked, but they didn't all the time from the desert until the destruction of the first temple. They only had one. They only used one ashes. The second temple, they offered 8 Red Heifers. That's 9. The 10th, the last, it's going to be offered by Mashiach. That's whatever in Eretz Yisrael. Quite often they found a cow that's highly red. Oh, that's a sign of Mashiach's coming. They haven't had one that's perfect, that's lasted for a while. It changes color after a while at one point in its body. But so the 10th Red Heifer is going to go from by Mashiach. But here's the law. The ashes from Moshe's Red Heifer were kept all together with the Aron HaKodesh throughout the entire time. And whenever they offered another Red Heifer, the Kohen who was offered the coming Red Heifer would first have to be purified with the ashes of Moshe's Red Heifer. In other words, in order for you to bring the next one, you need to be purified through the ashes of Moshe's. What's that teaching us? That from the beginning and for all time, who's going to make possible the service of chukim, of giving yourself over to God above understanding, above knowledge? A Moshe. That yes, there were other Moshes in subsequent generations, but when it comes to this particular service, you need to go back to the original Moshe, the heifer that he brought, and take the power from him, tune into the Moshe Rabbeinu. You want to take the next a little bit?
From where? From
when Moshe had no answer.
When Moshe had no answer. The Midrash states that when God told Moshe Rabbeinu about the impurity resulting from contact with a human corpse, Moshe's complexion turned ashen,
the dark.
and he asked, how will such a person regain ritual purity? Moshe was not as perplexed when God taught him about the kinds of ritual impurity for the impurity associated with them is only specific in nature. However, the impurity stemming from contact with the corpse is the most severe form of the impurity, the direct opposite of holiness. Holiness is associated with vitality. As long as one clings to the living God, there is no possibility of death. Death reflects utter separation from godliness. Therefore, Moshe was very perplexed. How could such a person regain purity?
Now, there's other lesser types of impurity. And all types of impurity have a certain conception, a certain connection with death. A woman becomes impure through menstruation. Why? Because menstruation, because that egg could have been a kid. It wasn't. And that's what died. This is an impurity. But it's not a real death. It's not that it's a semi thing. So yeah, Moshe says, so that type of impurity, Moshe says, I can understand. Yes, all impurities is what's pure, not pure. That's a decree. I wouldn't say that, but I can understand that impurity to a certain extent, and I can understand how you get pure from it. Death. What is death? He said. Hashem is Hu Elokim Chayim. He's the living God. Something which is lifeless means it's lost its connection to God. And somebody who comes in contact with that becomes impure. How can such a person become pure again? Moshe can't understand it. So,
God resolved this question for Moshe when he taught him the mitzvah of the red heifer. For the ashes of the red heifer can purify even this type of impurity. The mitzvah draws down the 13 attributes of mercy which transcend the confines and structures of Seder Ishtatlus. The chain-like progression of the divine revelation according to which our existence is designed. These attributes are utterly unlimited and remove all blemishes.
how does a person become impure from death, contact with death?
For this reason, the red heifer is referred to as
That is
choke.
because when a person, the red heifer was connected with the 13 attributes of mercy. What are the 13 attributes of mercy? Collecting the beard. You did it.
For reason.
I'm finished.
You have to.
No, just like because Isaac got while ago he put on the beard, and it's a whole different. It's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yes.
So it is from above. 13 attributes of mercy. These are above all logic and above all limitation. On Yom Kippur, what is Yom Kippur all about? We keep saying all Yom Kippur is the 13 attributes of mercy. Hashem, Ki Rachum, L'Chanun, Erech, Apayim. What do we say? What's happening when we're doing that? These are godliness without limitation. 10 is godliness in limitation. God's logic, his reason, his emotive qualities, his love, his fear. 10, you connect to God as he's bound himself, limited himself to a certain degree within the limitations of the world. 13, above, without beyond. And again, it's reflected in it's called tikkun dikna, the hairs of the beard. This draws down these 13 qualities that transcend any and all limitations. So, again, that's for Yom Kippur. You want to be purified? All of Yom Kippur is about Yud Gimel Midas, and in Chazal, Yud Gimel Midas Amanu Fanecha. We told they're constantly repeating it because you're constantly trying to tune in to that aspect of godliness which transcends limitation. As soon as you're in limitation, you sinned, so you got to pay for the sin in some way or form because you sinned. He sinned, you pay for it. Cause and effect. When you draw down godliness which is above limitation, no cause and effect anymore. You've tuned into him above reason, above logic. It's all gone. Washes everything away. And that's what the Red Heifer does. Red Heifer tunes in to these 13 attributes, and everything is washed away. Take us further now.
For this reason, the Red Heifer is referred to as a chop, symbiotically within the prevailing pattern revealed in the chain-like progression of divine light in both the private world of each human being and the world at large. It is impossible to bring purity to such a lowly place. Thus, it is written, who can bring forth purity from impurity? Only the one. Who can bring about purity for the most severe impurity? Only he who is singularly one within the world. For he is not bound by any limits.
In other words, when you come to a state of impurity, on the surface, I can't make it pure. Who can make it pure? Someone who is Yochid, singularly one, totally at one with every existence. In other words, that aspect of Hashem which lifts existence above what exists. Everybody says, oh, I got my own personality. The Chida says, no. There's something in you and in every aspect of the world which is much bigger than you, which you can't possibly understand. Who you really are is not who you think you are, your own personal identity. It's this aspect of godliness which transcends your own identity, transcends your you. It's his essence. And that point, there's no impurity. When that gets revealed, can any impurity block it? Is there any potential that can prevent that from being revealed? Nothing at all. And that's the key. That's what we're talking about here.
On this basis, we can also understand why the Red Heifer was offered outside the camp, in contrast to all other sacrifices that had to be offered specifically within the base Hamikdash. The Alter Rebbe explains that all the other sacrifices are done only for unintentional sins. This brings a result of the intensification of the influence of the animal soul, rooted in Klipat Noga, the shell-like veneer of existence that makes possible the mixture of God and evil. Therefore, they are offered within the Beis Hamikdash.
In other words, a normal sacrifice purifies, elevates those sins which are mistakes. We live in a material world. Because we live in a material world, the material dimension of things can overcome us sometimes, and accidentally we sin. That's not who we really are. So we said, so since that's not who you really are, you're really good, bring your sacrifice, and it'll be okay. But Red Heifer,
the Red Heifer, by contrast, purifies the ritual impurity associated with the corpse, the very lowest form of impurity, far below Klipas Noga. Accordingly, it is offered outside the camp to purify even the divine sparks enclosed in those levels outside the realm of holiness by revealing the divine light that transcends the limits of Seder stature.
In other words, when you get to real sins that are intentional, I purposely sinned, and I knew what I was doing, and I sinned. It happens. So can you go to the base of Mikdash and bring a sacrifice for such a sin? No. You're not holy. Base of Mikdash is for holy people. You sin, yeah, there is nothing to deal with those people who sinned accidentally. We're basically holy, we just slipped up. When you sin purposely, you can't go to base of Mikdash. Literally, you can't bring a sacrifice for a sin which is consciously performed. Very amazing. A sin which is performed consciously, you can't get no sacrifice which atones for. For Aduma atones for these. For Aduma atones for those sins which you consciously said. Why? It even atones for, purifies death. That's what's offered outside the base of Mikdash. We're talking about dealing with outside the realm of holiness. How can it do that? Because it deals with an aspect of God which is outside all limits. Again, he uses the Hebrew word "istalshelus," the structure of the world. And was the world is structured? This level of holiness, that level of holiness, this level of this level of that. All those are structures. Once you have a structure, you can't deal with something which is bad. It's bad. You can't deal with it. Who can deal with that type of thing? That level of godliness which knows no structure. Like I said before, there's Yud Gimel Yisarachim, these 13 attributes of mercy. God as he is in his true self, like we've said before, the aspect of will, a chok, which is God's will as it is without being limited to knowledge. That brings godliness into Arya. That can go even as deep and as far away as death and willful sins. Take the next little bit.
Beyond self-concern?
Yeah.
Are we there yet? Beyond
Yeah.
self-concern?
Yeah.
Beyond self-concern. To draw down a light which is above the limits of Seder, Hishdal, Shelish.
Those are those limits which structure our world.
From Yehido Shel Olam, he who is singularly one in the world. One must carry out divine service that stems from the Yehida of one's soul.
We feed again the aspect of the soul which is totally at one with God.
Serving God with utter bittul, a completely selfless commitment that transcends intellect entirely. To put it simply, Mesiras Nefesh, utter self-sacrifice is necessary. A person must put his own concerns aside, go outside the camp, take a cow, indeed one which is red, and prepare it as a sacrifice, knowing that he himself will thereby become impure, all this to enable other Jews to become pure.
And think about the Kohen. He's in the base of Mikdash, in a holy place, and he's doing a holy service. He sees this other Jew who's impure. So he's got to go outside the base of Mikdash, do something which he's going to become impure. Like I said before, anything involved with Red Heifer, the person who's involved with it, becomes impure. So he's going to sacrifice being in the base of Mikdash, sacrifice his state of purity. Why? To help this guy who's impure. To help this guy who's messed up. That's self-sacrifice. That's what the Red Heifer is all about. And in order to bring down that level of godliness, which is unlimited, you've got to step out of your own limits. You can't just, I'm going to be holy. If you're holy, you're structured. You're defined. And if you're defined, you can't touch the unholy. Look at that. So, you followed that very well. And really, like, he wasn't holy in a simple sense of holiness. Because he touched the infinite. That too, he was, he was able to tune into that level that exists, which transcends everything, to make other Jews impure, to make other Jews pure.
The willingness to descend to a place where one will become impure to do a favor for another Jew should be without any self-concern. The help with which one offers must be given freely without any thought of personal benefit. True, our sages teach, more than the donor gives to the recipient gives to the donor. But when a person has such a reckoning in mind when benefiting others, he has not transcended his personal existence, the structural limits that govern Seder, Hishtalesh, Shelesh. As such, it is impossible for him to draw down God's essence through such divine service.
In other words, there are people who say, yeah, I'll make the sacrifice to teach somebody who's outside the realm of Jewish practice. I'll go out there. I'll sacrifice my Torah knowledge. I'll sacrifice the time I can spend in purifying, improving myself. Why? To help that other person. But why? Because, I'm going to get such great reward for helping that person. I understand how that's valuable, and God will reward everybody who performs that service. So I'm going to do it because it's good for me. Now, first of all, who are you going to reach with that approach? You're going to be able to reach some people. There's some people, you're teaching something good? They'll listen. But in the end, you're not going to get really dirty, so you're not going to touch the people who are really dirty. Now, if you're not willing to give up yourself, then you can't really reach the person who's down in the dumps, spiritual dumps. You've got to, if you're thinking about, what a good thing I'm doing, then you've lost it. You're doing a good thing, so you'll do a good thing. But who are you going to relate to? People who have some sort of conception of good things. A person who has no conception of good things, who's out of that realm entirely, you can't reach because you haven't yourself gone out of the limits. So, take a point. And then you can't draw down God's essence. That's the next point.
When does a person draw down God's essence? When he does a favor for another person despite the knowledge that he will thereby become impure. God will certainly repay him many times over for his troubles, but this is not his concern. He should be willing to make the effort even if he will not gain anything and instead only become impure as a result.
But there's no question that, we say you shouldn't think about the reward. You're going to get a reward. Don't worry about it. You're going to get a reward. But no, once you're thinking of the reward, you've lost it. You've defeated the whole dynamic. Such bittul
and lack of self-concern reflect a commitment to accept God's will that transcends intellect and expresses the rung of chukah within the person himself, the essence of his soul. Such service draws down the chukah above God's essence. The above concepts enable us to understand the unique dimensions of the laws regarding the red heifer mentioned previously, that it imparts impurity to the pure and conveys purity to the impure, and that is offered outside the camp. These aspects bring out the concept of chukim, through which a Jew reveals the essence of the soul engraved within the core of his being.
And as we said before, some of you guys have missed it, that the word chok, which is these laws which transcend understanding, is connected to the Hebrew word chakikah, which means engraving. Engraving means that part of the soul which is not a separate thing. Written letters are separate from the paper that they're written in. Engraved letters are part of the substance itself. There's no separation whatsoever. So, the service of going beyond yourself reveals that aspect of ourselves which is totally one with God. There's no separation. He hasn't.
The essence of the soul is expressed through the commitment of self-sacrifice and the bittul involved in doing a favor for another Jew and helping him become purified. Even when preparing the ashes for his rite requires that the Kohen leave the camp and become impure himself.
That touches the core of a Jew's being. Since the core of a Jew means godliness, which has no limitations, so tuning into selflessness, which has no limitation, it's got to make yourself impure for the sake of another person. That brings out that inner core. Next point.
These aspects relate to the Torah in its totality, for the foundation of the Torah involves rising above all form and structure and subjugating our personal I. This includes not only the I of the body, but also the I of the soul. This self-sacrifice is expressed particularly through Ahavas Yisrael, the love for a fellow Jew, which is totality of the Torah.
In other words, he said before, he says, Zos Chukas Torah. This is the chukah of the Torah. What I mean, the whole Torah is really expressed through this idea of chol. Why? Because what is the whole idea of Torah? Going beyond yourself, doing something totally for God, losing your self-concern entirely. And so when you do that, when you're willing to give yourself up for another person, not only the eye of, it's a little bit uncomfortable for me body-wise, it's uncomfortable for me spiritually. We say Mesiras Nefesh, I mean giving over the soul, even sacrificing my ruchnius, my spirituality, for the sake of another person. That's Mesiras Nefesh. Third.
C. The potential for such commitment stems from Moshe, our teacher. He was the epitome of selflessness as expressed in his words, V'nachnu ma. Literally, what are we? Interpreted by Hasidus as meaning we are nothingness. Nothingness he revealed, and continued to reveal the bittul that stems from the essence of the soul within every Jew.
Who was Moshe Rabbeinu? We said before, that expression of total selflessness, total godliness, and when you come in contact with Moshe Rabbeinu, you bring that dimension out within yourself. Okay. Next point, I'm going to take it outside. Do we have anybody outside there? We just speak about going beyond yourself. But you can't totally go beyond yourself. You got to remember that you exist. What do we mean? Separate standards express the Torah's innovation is its capacity to infuse two seemingly opposite motives. In personal terms, this means one must put aside his own concerns to help another Jew. Like I said before, give up yourself, not your physical self, but also your spiritual self. However, at the same time, he cannot forget about himself. His outreach efforts must be coupled with a concern for his own refinement. When you're helping another person, you want him to grow spiritually, but you also have to grow spiritually. Now, that's a very real thing sometimes. I should do this more often, but every once in a while, I go out and do the children campaign. Stand in the street, ask people who'd like to put on tefillin. A lot of those people put on tefillin with a much deeper concern for the mitzvah than I do every morning. And they're excited. Oh, yeah. When I put on tefillin in the morning most of the time, it's at best I'm thinking about intellectually about the mitzvah. I'm not inspired. And these people are sometimes really inspired. So yeah, my outreach efforts teach me and help me improve my own self. But you go even deeper than that. It's written when you see a naked person, you should cover him. You should not turn away from your own flesh. Since mitzvahs are described with the analogy of garments, this verse can be interpreted as meaning when you see a naked person, one who has no mitzvahs which to clothe himself, you should clothe him, inspiring to wear the mitzvahs to wear tefillin and citizen life. At the same time, however, you should not turn away from your own flesh. What do you mean your own flesh? A person has to realize that he's flesh, coarse meat, materialistically inclined. Consequently, he must carry out a process of refinement that includes spiritual counterparts, each of the three steps involved in preparing flesh to be Eaten, soaking, salting, and then afterwards washing with the blood. He explains that in the footnote here. You salt meat to remove the blood. And the first step is soaking soaking the meat alludes to immerse yourself in the waters of knowledge. You want to be able to elevate yourself. You've got to immerse yourself in the waters of knowledge. You've got to have something, spiritual knowledge, to help you grow. If you don't have that knowledge, I want to grow. I want to make myself a little bit better. You don't have to. You're groping around with, I want to do better, but how do I do that? And you say, you have personal interest, I want to do better. But you can't. You don't have a path. Immerse yourself in the waters of knowledge, you get a path. Then salting, purge the world from excitement that stem from worldly pleasures. You got to a certain extent, you've got to give up. You don't have to give up all worldly involvement, but the pleasure, but this is what I live for, that you got to give up. Yeah, you can take satisfaction from material things, no question about it. But not for the sense, this is what I live for, that you can't do. And then afterwards, you got to wash it all away. All this fact that I've now become a little bit more spiritually elevated, that's not important. No trace of that. No that I don't feel proud that, look what I've done. See how much I've improved myself. No, wash it all away. So this is the idea of flesh. A person must know he's flesh, and then the mitzvah has. So since the mitzvah, the Red Heifer represents the totality of Torah, it also alludes to this concept, which is reflected in the actions of Moshe, the Red Heifer, which Moshe offered, were divided into 3 portions. One was offered to purify the impure, the second was satisfied for the Kohanim who are subsequent Red Heifers, and the third portion was set as the keepsake. What's a keepsake? The keepsake is a reminder. And we spoke about before the other 2, purifying the impure and keeping this for future generations. But you need a keepsake. What's the keepsake? Call attention to the possibility that the impurity associated with death can come into our lives. You have to have something to remind you. You always be aware. So that yes, you've got to be involved with others, but that involvement with others has to somehow keep us with the reminder that, we ourselves have to grow spiritually. We ourselves not stand in one place. If you stand in one place, you got to be sitting down. Okay, so the last thing, in the last section, he summarizes. You see, a Jew does not outwardly appear to be clinging to the living God and looks spiritually lifeless. You can think that the person so low is lost beyond repair. We have teachers that's not. We have a teacher that even a person who's in contact with death, he's at core a Jew. At core a Jew, he's an actual part of God. He's an actual part of God, he can be elevated. So the second point is, it's always going to tell you, you can purify that person, but you're going to come impure. So first you've got to realize that's not an important factor. You've got to be willing to make that self-sacrifice. As I said before, it's not just sacrifice of the soul. You've got to even be willing to sacrifice your own purity. And if you don't do that, you're missing Chukas Torah. What does it say? So you're out of the whole picture. It's the whole Torah here. If you don't have this concept, you've lost the entire picture. And then third, you might think that, why am I so successful influencing others? Because I'm a capable guy. I have knowledge. I have a feeling for another person. I've got a certain inspirational quality. No. The Red Heifer is Chukosh of Moshe. It's the Red Heifer that Moshe offered. This quality comes the only way you're really going to inspire another person is by going beyond your own identity entirely. And how are you going to go beyond your own identity? By tuning into a Moshe, tuning into a person whose core is total selflessness. And then the fourth point, you could say, I purified by the other people. That's what I do 24/7. So I spend my whole time purifying others. No. Yes, you've got to purify others, it's very important. But you've also got to think about your own purification at the same time. Not chas v'sholom, putting yourself on a pedestal for this, but the idea that, like we said before, I'm also flesh. I also have a material dimension. In order that material dimension of my being not get mixed in, I've got to work on that. I spend some effort on self-improvement.